Welcome to this video, which is titled Knowledge Through Humility. A great example of acquisition of knowledge through humility was that of Socrates, the great Greek philosopher. Socrates was known for his method of inquiry, which involved asking questions and challenging people's assumptions. One example of how Socrates' humility was useful in acquiring knowledge is his conversation with the oracle of Delphi. The oracle told Socrates that he was the wisest man in Athens. This surprised Socrates because he thought he knew very little. Socrates talked to politicians, poets, craftsmen, but he found that they all had false beliefs about what it meant to be wise. He concluded that the oracle was right and that he was the wisest man in Athens because he was the only one who knew that he didn't know everything. Socrates' humility allowed him to learn from others and to grow his knowledge. He was willing to admit that he didn't know something and was open to new ideas and expression. This openness and willingness to learn led him to make important contributions to philosophy and to the development of the Western thought. Here are some additional thoughts on how Socrates' humility was useful in his acquisition of knowledge. Socrates' humility allowed him to listen to others with an open mind. He was not afraid to be challenged, and he was willing to change his mind if presented with a new evidence. Socrates' humility also allowed him to ask better questions. When you are humble, you are less likely to be defensive and more likely to be curious, and this curiosity can lead to better questions, which can lead to better answers. Please bear with me to give you one more example of how his method of dialogue was useful in seeking the truth. This is the example of how Socrates employed his method of dialogue to ask tough questions that can be found in famous conversation. One example of Socrates employing his method of dialogue to ask tough questions can be found in his famous conversation with Euthyphro. In his dialogue, Socrates questions Euthyphro, a self-proclaimed expert in matters of piety and religious matters. The conversation begins with Euthyphro confidently asserting that he knows what piety is and that he is pursuing a just course of action in prosecuting his own father for murder. Socrates, however, does not accept Euthyphro's claim without scrutiny and proceeds to ask a series of probing questions. Socrates starts by asking Euthyphro to define what is piety. Euthyphro responds by saying that piety is what is pleasing to the gods. Sensing a potential problem, Socrates continues to probe further, asking if something is pious because the gods love it, or if the gods love it because it is pious. Euthyphro confidently claims that something is pious because gods love it. However, Socrates challenges this notion by asking if God's love is something arbitrary or if there is a reason behind their love. Euthyphro acknowledges that gods must have a reason for loving certain things. Socrates then pushes Euthyphro to identify that reason. He asks whether the gods love something because it is pious or if it is pious because the gods love it. Euthyphro finds himself in a dilemma, unable to provide a satisfactory answer. If something is pious because the gods love it, then piety becomes arbitrary, as the god's preference could change. If the gods love something because it is pious, then piety exists independent of the gods, undermining Euthyphro's initial claim. Through this dialogue, Socrates challenges Euthyphro's confident assertions and exposes the weakness in his understanding of piety. Socrates' method of asking probing questions and forcing his interlocutors to critically examine their beliefs is a hallmark of his philosophical approach. By not accepting superficial answers and seeking deeper understanding, Socrates encourages self-reflection and more nuanced exploration of complex ideas. Socrates' humility allowed him to learn from mistakes. When you are humble, you are more likely to admit that you are wrong. This willingness to admit mistakes can lead to learning and growth. Socrates' humility was a powerful force for learning and growth. It allowed him to listen to others, ask better questions, learn from his mistake. These qualities made him one of the greatest influential thinkers in history. This is the thought I wanted to share with you about humility and learning and knowledge. Thank you for watching and listening, and have a great life.